Now, I only found out about this whole thing because a friend told me he'd gone to one of these events. He said, yeah, well, we just met in the park, and everybody brought pudding and a fork. And I thought he was joking. But he showed me the pictures, and sure enough, there they were. A crowd of people, sitting on the grass, eating pudding with forks. And to be fair, I don't think it's that strange. When I was in high school, which honestly isn't that long ago, I ate pudding with fork once too, but it just kind of happened. They would spoon around and you make do. But back then, it wasn't a trend, it was just lunch. What's funny is how one small, random deed, really, something that barely means anything, it suddenly turned into a movement. And it started in Karlsruhe, just a flyer somebody hung up one day, saying, reading, let's eat pudding with a fork, everybody's welcome. No message, no hidden agenda, just a strange invitation that made people curious enough to show up. And then it spread to Berlin, to Vienna, to Zurich, and people gathering in parks and public squares, putting pudding cups in one hand and forks raised like little flags of irony. It's absurd, sure, but it's also kind of touching. Because when one thinks about it, at least when I think about it, pudding isn't really the point. It's just an excuse, a reason to meet, to be together, to fill a quiet space, to fill a quiet space in the day with laughter and something shared, as in a small rebellion against loneliness. Um, Most of us carry this kind of loneliness around. Even when we're surrounded by people, we scroll, we message, we react, but we rarely just exist with somebody. And maybe eating pudding with a fork is a way of breaking that silence, of saying, well, I don't really know you, but we can be absurd together. And this is something I think Camus would have understood, because he wrote about how the world doesn't offer us any meaning, and yet we keep asking for it. The beauty, he said, is in continuing anyway. That's the spirit of the absurd, to live fully, even when nothing makes sense. And it's kind of the same with Camus himself, smoking one cigarette after another. Each puff was for him a rebellion against the emptiness he saw around him. He knew it wouldn't change the world, but it was his way of saying, well, I'm still here, I'm still choosing to live. Maybe eating pudding with a fork is today's version of that. A small, harmless way of declaring your existence, of saying, I know this is pointless, but I'm doing it anyway. Sure, it's impractical. You'll probably lose half the pudding between the times anyway. But that's life, isn't it? You never get it. You never really get it all. You just try it sometimes, you smile doing it. Now, I haven't actually been to one of those gatherings myself, and I probably won't, really. But it's interesting to know people who do, to see that spark of connection, the human need to be part of something, even if it's something absurd. And maybe the beauty of this whole thing isn't in the pudding at all, but in the fact that the hundreds of people, for once, put their phones down and sat in the same place and shared something strange and meaningless, and then felt a bit less alone because of it. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's what being human still means. Finding each other through small, absurd acts that don't need to be explained. So yeah, when I think about it now, I don't find it strange anymore. What's really strange is rather how easily we forget to connect. Um, and how sometimes it takes something as silly as eating pudding with a fork to remind us how good it feels just to be part of something.